Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the CD guy, Johnny Z here. Thank you so much for tuning back into the channel, and today we're going to take a look at my favorite metal songs from 1980 all the way up to present day, from 1980 to 2024. So, 44 years of metal to get to here, and I didn't want to start in the 70s. I've seen a lot of people do these videos, and they started in the 70s, at 1970 specifically, but I feel like during the 70s, what was metal wasn't, particularly fleshed out compared to what was rock, and so there's kind of a fuzzy line between rock and metal. I feel like when you do a list like this, you need to, define a hard difference between rock and metal. Otherwise, the criteria just gets way too big, and it's, this is already a hard list to make as it is. And so, I think once you start in 1980, metal had its identity. It was different from the rock scene, and so it's a lot easier to choose. So with that in mind, let's get started here in the 80s. We get started here in 1980 with Heaven and Hell, the title track to Black Sabbath's first record with Ronnie James Dio on lead vocals. One of my favorite Tony Iommi riffs and some of Ronnie's best lyrics too. This is a top 5 Black Sabbath song for sure. 1981, gonna go with another title track here, and that is Diary of a Madman by Ozzy Osbourne. This is Ozzy's second solo record here. It's the last song on the final album to feature Randy Rhoads on guitar, and of course Randy and Ozzy had that great chemistry together, and Randy has an awesome solo on this track. It's a great album closer and features some of the best lyrics in the Ozzy solo catalog, and even 4 decades of new albums later, it's hard to compete with the stuff Ozzy did, early on with Randy, Bob Daisley, and Lee Kerslake on the first 2 records, and so for 1981, I gotta go with Diary of a Madman on a record full of great songs. 1982, let's go with Hallowed Be Thy Name by Iron Maiden from the Number of the Beast record. Simply put, this is the greatest metal song of all time, in my opinion at least. Iron Maiden reached new levels with the addition of Bruce Dickinson to the band, replacing Paul Di'Anno for Number of the Beast. And, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Hallowed Be Thy Name is to me what Stairway to Heaven is to most classic rock fans. And, of course, the live version is the highlight of every Iron Maiden concert as well. From 1983, we have Evil by Merciful Fate. This is the quintessential Merciful Fate track, in my opinion, and the perfect opener to their debut album. You have the dueling guitars of Hank Sherman and Michael Denner, and those distinct King Diamond vocals. And, 83 was a stacked year, so it was hard to choose between, so many great records and a lot of awesome material that came out that year. But at the end of the day, Evil is just really explosive stuff and classic Mercy all around. Another great year, 1984. I'm going to go with Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Iron Maiden from Power Slave. The 13-minute classic to close out Power Slave here, and it's still the king of the Maiden epics all these years later, and I know Bruce said he does want to do this song live once again, and so there's definitely some hope that it comes back for the Run for Your Lives tour. I'd love to hear the song live one more time. Great track, definitely the best from Power Slave, and my favorite from 84. Next, of course, 1985. Let's go with And Then There Were None by Exodus from the great Bonded by Blood. And I felt like for 85, I just had to include something from the greatest thrash debut of all time. This track just encapsulates everything that's great about Bonded by Blood. It's one of my favorite Exodus riffs ever. This track is brutal. The backing vocals are absolutely killer. Just pure thrash greatness here by Exodus in 85. Speaking of great thrash metal, in 86 here, let's go with Disposable Heroes by Metallica from the Master of Puppets record. And, just like what I was talking about with And Then There Were None, this is another one of the best thrash songs of all time, in my opinion, and just has everything you could want in a Metallica song. The build-up, the chugging riff, the double time speed, the amazing vocal lines, and lyrics by James Hetfield, and as far as I'm concerned, the best solo on the album. From thrash to power metal here in 1987, I'm going to go with A Tale That Wasn't Right off the first Keeper of the Seven Keys album by Helloween. One of Michael Kiskey's greatest vocal performances in the Helloween catalog, and a really stellar ballad to close out side 1 of this record. Keeper Part 1 was the first Helloween album to feature Michael Kiskey on lead vocals, and I've talked a lot on the channel about Kiskey really helping the band to get to that next level. And this track is an excellent showcase for his vocal abilities that he brought to the table. Back to Iron Maiden here in 1988 for Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, the powerful title track to Seventh Son with really cool lyrics outlining the entire concept of the record. I love how, theatrical this song gets. It's one of Maiden's finest epics, and really their last great epic for a number of years. The harmony outro is fantastic, and I love the use of keyboards to make synth effects that give this song, and the whole album really, just a larger-than-life feel. Last of the 80s here with 1989, I'm going to go with The Headless Children by Wasp, the title track to this great record, and Blackie Lawless is such an underrated songwriter who will forever be lumped in with the hair metal scene of the mid-80s out of the Sunset Strip, but that's not really fair considering he started writing, a lot more mature lyrics with Headless Children in 89. The title track to this album is, one of the first Wasp songs I ever heard, and it remains one of my all-time favorites. Great lyrics here from Blackie, and I thought it was really cool to hear this song live when I saw them last year. Unfortunately, unfortunately, I was only part of the song as part of a headless medley, but the title track definitely deserves to be played live in its entirety for sure. Awesome song here by Wasp, as this kind of marked the beginning of them taking a much more serious direction in the studio. Into the 90s we go with Painkiller by Judas Priest in 1990. This was really hard to pick between Painkiller and Holy Wars by Megadeth, but Painkiller is just a little stronger in my opinion, just unrelenting from beginning to end. The peak of Rob Halford's vocals too. You got that great drum intro from Scott Travis. Such a necessary song and album for Priest to make, to start up the 90s here after two Tamer records to close out the 1980s. 1991, a stacked year, but it's got to go to Lack of Comprehension by Death from the Human record. Just love Steve DiGiorgio's bass playing here. I think it's some of Steve's best moments on Human. And the drumming by Sean Reinert is amazing as well. This was, a great lineup for the band, and like the rest of the album, it sees Death getting more proggy in their sound. Love the intro to this song, maybe a little bit of jazz fusion mixed in with your death metal, I don't know, but, the whole song absolutely rips. Death never made a bad song, and Chuck Schuldiner was just a musical genius. 1992, let's go with Chainsaw Charlie, Murders in the New Morgue. My favorite Wasp song of all time, and one of my favorite songs ever, as a matter of fact. And of course, if you follow the channel, you probably know by now that the Crimson Idol is my favorite album of all time, so I definitely had to rep something from this album in 92 here. It's Blackie Lawless's masterpiece, and Chainsaw Charlie is just a scathing track with awesome drumming by Frankie Banali. Best on the record, no doubt. 1993, let's go with Typo Negative off of the Bloody Kisses record. I'm going to go with Black Number 1, Little Miss Scareall. A classic Typo Negative song here and a hallmark of their live sets throughout their entire career from the moment of its release going forward. Love the atmosphere here. It's got a great brooding vibe to it. Great vocal delivery by Peter Steele as well. Just a gothic metal essential here from this great album. So from 93, I think Typo steal it here with really this whole record. But if I had to pick one favorite, have to go with Black Number 1. Great stuff. Picking something from 1994 was next to impossible, one of the best years in metal history, but ultimately I'm going to go with Finger Paintings of the Insane by Acid Bath. Too few people know about Acid Bath. This is a sick song, but then again, this is a sick album, and Acid Bath are pretty sick dudes. But love the diversity on the whole record, and the time changes displayed, the sludgy, dirty riffs and bleak vocals, all of which are on display on Finger Paintings of the Insane, which is a song that's definitely on my Mount Rushmore of sludge metal essentials. Moving on to 1995 now, let's go with Grind by Alice in Chains from Self-Titled or Tripod here. And, one of the best things about this record is the abrasive sound, and that's on full display on Grind, the opening track on the record with some absolutely filthy riffs by Jerry Cantrell and some of the coldest lyrics in the Alice in Chains discography. 1996, honorable mention to The Outlaw Torn by Metallica, but I gotta go with Floods by Pantera. Such a brooding, dark track on the Great Southern Trendkill with perfect delivery from Phil Anselmo, and of course that legendary guitar solo from Dimebag Darrell, possibly his best. And, not just my favorite song from 96, but my favorite Pantera song of all time as well. For 97, let's go with a track from a really underrated album. I'm talking about My Tortured Eyes by Wasp from the KFD record. And, this is probably the song from KFD that has aged the best. Not a loved album by a lot of people. Also not a very successful album for Wasp, who were trying their hand at, more industrial Marilyn Manson-inspired sound for this record. It's a really dark track with brilliant lyrics. And once again, Blackie Lawless remains undefeated in the songwriting department. We have an Iron Maiden-esque epic here from the solo catalog of Bruce Dickinson for 1998. I'm going to go with The Book of Thel off the Chemical Wedding album, my favorite Bruce Dickinson solo album, and I was so happy to see him bring it back for a solo tour last year. I'm a huge fan of Chemical Wedding, and like I said, probably, his best solo album, and this is probably Bruce's best solo track as well. Maybe one of his best songs ever, with or without Iron Maiden. 1999, The Spirit Carries On by Dream Theater from Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from a Memory. I don't use the word beautiful a lot to describe songs, but this is a beautiful song for sure. Some of the finest lyrics in the Dream Theater catalog, written by John Petrucci, who goes full Gilmore on the guitar solo too, and it really does a stellar job of tying the whole album together, and it's been, a live staple for years as well. Entering the 21st century now in the year 2000, let's go with Valentine's Day by Marilyn Manson from the Holy Wood record. Manson saved his career in 2000 with Holy Wood. My personal favorite song from this record has got to be Valentine's Day. Some of the best lyrics on the album, and the intro trips me up every time because it's so similar to the intro to the Love Song, but the chorus is just crushing and so powerful. A total earworm for sure, and I have unreasonably high expectations for Manson's newly announced US headlining tour. I'll be seeing him live for the first time. Highly unlikely this song comes back to the set list, but hey, a guy can dream, right? For 2001, I'm going to go with something from the great Lateralist record by Tool. I'm going to go with The Patient. Now, Tool albums are probably best listened to in their entirety. I don't like to isolate songs, especially on an album like Lateralist, which is meant to be heard from beginning to end. But if I had to pick one, it would have to be The Patient. And I was hoping that they would do the song live when I saw them last year, but I knew that was a long shot. Although they did do it a few times in 2022, so who knows, right? But anytime an R. James Keenan writes a song about his mother, you know it's going to be a lyrical masterpiece, and the whole song, much like everything else on this record, is a journey in and of itself, and this has the slow, quiet moments, the heavy riffs, the prog jam session, not the most ambitious song, I don't think, on the record, and, some other standout tracks might come to mind for the best song from '01, like The Grudge or Schism, but to me, this is the one that sticks out the most, so for 2001, I gotta go with The Patient by Tool. From 2002, I'm going to go with the title track to 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence by Dream Theater. Yeah, I'm going to go with the whole thing, all 45, 46 minutes of it. The longest Dream Theater song in their catalog. It's the whole side 2 of this record, broken into 8 parts, but it's best to listen to the whole thing in its entirety, and, Spotify breaks it up, which is just absolutely criminal, but, I know a lot of prog bands do stuff like this, and it never gets old, but just the idea of sitting down and writing something and creating a piece like this is just borderline incomprehensible to me. 2003, going to go with Passchendaele by Iron Maiden from Dance of Death. How is this song not a live staple in every Iron Maiden tour? I have no idea. A post-reunion classic by Iron Maiden, written by Adrian Smith. Such a powerful track from Dance of Death, which is full of great songs, but this is the highlight for me, and I just hope Maiden break this one out live one more time before they retire. 2004, let's go with The Pursuit of Vikings by Amon Amarth. God, I love the chorus of this song. Probably the first Amon Amarth song I'd show to someone who was new to the band. I mean, it's just everything you could want from them all in one track. The main riff of this song kicks all kinds of Viking butt. I mean, just the definition of epic. '05, let's go with Octavarium by Dream Theater. Another title track here by Dream Theater. And you know what I was saying about 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence? Yeah, pretty much the same thing for this song. 24 minutes just flies by. The ending might just be my favorite part of any Dream Theater song ever, and the whole band are on fire here. I never understood the whole, Dream Theater, great musicians, write boring music, thing. I never understood that. This is a gripping, compelling listen from beginning to end that never ceases to blow me away. So, yeah, never quite got that notion from a lot of people who are bored by Dream Theater's music. This is just some tremendous stuff, and maybe Jordan Rudess's finest hour in the band. For 2006, of course, I had to go with something from my favorite Iron Maiden album of all time, A Matter of Life and Death, and that's gotta be Brighter Than a Thousand Suns. My personal favorite Iron Maiden song of all time from the criminally underrated Matter of Life and Death record. Just some bone-crunchingly heavy riffs on here, and brilliant lyrics written by Adrian Smith, Steve Harris, and Bruce Dickinson. This song just builds and builds. It's wickedly overlooked, and I so wish the band would bring this back. In my opinion, their best post-reunion song by a long shot. From 2007, I'm going to go with Heavens Hung in Black by Wasp. When Blackie Lawless wants to be a deep and serious songwriter, there's nobody that can touch him. And case in point, this great song here from the Dominator record. Very underrated song from an album that probably fell on deaf ears by 2007, but the guitar work on this track is also stellar. Probably my favorite Wasp song of the newer albums, if you can still call 2007 newer, but, from a guitar standpoint, just incredible stuff. Probably my favorite, of those relatively recent albums, right? And just a really well-crafted song, and Blackie is able to convey so much in his vocal delivery that adds a lot to this track as well. 2008, I gotta go with Snuff here by Slipknot from All Hope Is Gone. This song is proof that, sometimes you don't need screaming and crushing riffs to make a song heavy, and it's a song that's become all the more heavy to the band members years after, the years that followed. It's the final single released from the band with original bassist Paul Gray before his death 8 months after its release, and drummer Joey Jordison before his departure in 2013. And it's a song that's been played live scarcely over the last several years by the band, and it's only been done 77 times live since 2008, but my favorite song from All Hope Is Gone, and quite possibly my favorite Slipknot song of all time as well. 2009, I'm going to go with Looking in View by Alice in Chains from the Black Gives Way to Blue record. A reunited Alice in Chains with Will Duvall on lead vocals put any doubts about the post-Lane era to bed immediately with this classic from Black Gives Way to Blue. Love the harmonies between Jerry and Will, and there's some really great heavy riffs on here as well. I think it probably still holds up as their best song of the post-reunion era even to this day. Awesome work here by Alice in Chains on their comeback album Black Gives Way to Blue with new vocalist Will Duvall. New decade now, the 2010s. Let's go with Elizabeth, or as they say, Elizabeth by Ghost, from their debut album, Opus Eponymous. And for everyone who says Ghost aren't a metal band, I submit this song to you. The best track from their debut, as far as I'm concerned, and has some definite Merciful Fate vibes to it. One of the band's heaviest songs, and I wish they'd do it live again, but apparently it's a real strain on Tobias Forge's voice. For 2011, I had to go with something from Anthrax's reunion album with Joey Belladonna, Worship Music. Belladonna back on lead vocals here for the first time in almost 2 decades, and my personal favorite from this record has got to be In the End. Just a personal favorite for me. I mean, this album is full of awesome tracks, but the band's tribute to Dimebag Darrell and Ronnie James Dio, the lyrics on here just cut like a knife, and I'd say it's probably my favorite Anthrax song since the reunion, although there's only been 2 albums of material to choose from, but nevertheless, this is an amazing song, and I was so glad they did it live when I saw them a couple of years ago. 2012, let's go with the title track, To Careless Rex, my favorite Sabaton song of all time, and Sabaton are a band that get a lot of hate for reasons I don't really understand, but this track is just some great power metal with a really powerful and explosive chorus. Amazing title track with a big epic feel to it, just classic Sabaton for sure. 2013, I'm going to go with Hollow by Alice in Chains. I mean, what can I say? Jerry Cantrell is just a riff machine, and Hollow is another reminder that Jerry can harmonize with anyone. He and Will Duvall sound great here, and the chorus is very memorable. The Devil Put Dinosaurs here is a wickedly underrated record. I'd put it just a notch below the excellent Black is Way to Blue, and this is a great way to kick things off. Great opener on the record here. So for 2013, gotta go with Hollow. Home stretch now. 10 more years remain. Now in the year 2014, I'm gonna go with Halls of Valhalla by Judas Priest from Redeemer of Souls. And, Redeemer of Souls isn't one of my favorite Judas Priest albums of all time, but Halls of Valhalla is by far the best song on this record, and really the album's big highlight for me. I think it's one of their best since the reunion with Rob Halford as well. The Metal God still sounds great here, and I think this song's a killer showcase for the new guitarist at the time, Richie Faulkner, who was replacing KK Downing, so it's great stuff here. I would have loved to have heard KK on this track, but Richie does a great job as well. 2015, let's go with Iron Maiden off of the Book of Souls record, another sentimental album for me, but gotta go with the closer to this album, The Empire of the Clouds, the 18-minute epic, and it's just another one of those songs that you just sit in amazement and say, how do you sit and write something like this? Empire of the Clouds is like if Bruce Dickinson got bitten by a radioactive Bruce Dickinson and proceeded to write the world's greatest song about a blimp. That's exactly what it is, and 18 minutes flies by here, and it's just one of those complex tracks where you hear something new every time you listen to it, and so it has so many re-listenable qualities to it. I never get tired of hearing it, and it never feels like 18 minutes long. It never lags. 2016 was an amazing year for thrash metal. So many great releases, and Megadeth were right on top with the release of Dystopia. So for 2016, I gotta go with the great song The Threat Is Real off of this record. It's super thrashy, very riff heavy, and totally could have fit on any of those classic Megadeth albums from the late 80s and early 90s. I think this was the best that Megadeth had sounded in years, at least the best since Endgame in 2009, but The Threat Is Real, one of my favorite Megadeth songs of the 21st century, definitely my favorite of 2016. 2017, I'm gonna go with Power Trip and Executioner's Tax, Swing of the Axe. Power Trip have done an excellent job of bringing back that old school thrash metal sound in the 21st century. Bands like Power Trip, Municipal Waste, they've done, huge contributions to the thrash resurgence of the past 10 years or so, but Power Trip really take you back to the golden years of old school thrash with Executioner's Tax. Awesome vocals on here by the late Riley Gale. Just a smoldering old school thrashy song, and one of the band's best for sure. Back to Ghost here in 2018 for Life Eternal off of the Prequel record, combined with the instrumental that precedes it, Helveston Foster. Hope I pronounced that right. This is an incredible closure to Prequel. Some of the most meaningful and emotional lyrics in the Ghost catalog, and again, I don't say it often, but this is just a beautifully written song, and hands down my favorite Ghost song of all time. Tool finally broke their new album drought in 2019 with Fear Inoculum, so for 2019 I have to go with Pneuma. This is a song that I gained a whole new appreciation for when I saw Tool live. This track should never leave the Tool live set, and Fear Inoculum in general is a grower of an album. Took multiple listens to fully appreciate this record, but Pneuma I think is one of the band's best compositions to this date. Danny Carey's drumming really stands out, and I'm sure everyone has had that video recommended to them here on YouTube of Danny's drum cam during Pneuma, but I highly recommend checking that out. It'll definitely give you a newfound appreciation for some of the complexities on this track for sure. Let's dive into the not-so-roaring 20s here with Children of the Next Level by Testament from Titans of Creation from 2020. It's wild to think that like 35 years after their debut album, Testament did some of their best work of their entire career on Titans of Creation, and this is a really sick album opener that gets everything started, really sets the bar for the rest of the record, and they've really found their groove again, and have been getting progressively tighter and more complex with each release since formation of Damnation. This was the first Testament album I ever bought, and I think Children of the Next Level had, a lot to do with that. When it was released, it was a single, it was just a monster of a track, just from beginning to end, and it's great to see so many thrash metal bands have, a creative resurgence over the past decade or so, and Testament are included in that. This song is very old school Testament, but it manages to sound fresh and new at the same time. 2021, Hell on Earth by Iron Maiden from Senjutsu, and, Maiden continue to do it again and again and again. I can't explain it, but in case you haven't figured it out yet, Iron Maiden are my favorite band, and I love pretty much everything they do. Hell on Earth is a masterful album closer to what might be their most progressive album to date in Senjutsu, and this is a song that just builds and builds and builds. Reminds me a lot of When the Wild Wind Blows from Final Frontier. It was an absolutely awesome live track on the Future Past tour too. Loved hearing it live. I'm sure they won't bring it back on the next tour, but it was great to hear it. Probably only that one or two, time they do it live. But, I guess my only nitpick would be, I wish the chorus appeared more than once on this track, but that's just because it's so catchy. 2022, let's go with Damnation by Blind Guardian off of the God Machine, a modern Blind Guardian masterpiece, although they don't make bad albums. Definitely my favorite track from their most recent record, and I love the vocals in the chorus by Hansi Kirsch, and the great guitar melodies on display as well. Just amazing stuff here by Blind Guardian, who, like I said, do not make bad records, but this is an exceptional album. I think it's one of their best of the 21st century. For 2023, I'm going to go with Scourge of the Offspring from this great album here, just edging out We Eat Our Young for my favorite song on Terrasite. The first half of the song almost gives off Gojira vibes, which I think is really cool. Travis Ryan's vocals are still in great shape. It's just an absolute scorcher of a track here by Cattle Decap, and total standout here from this excellent record here by the band, who are still doing some of the best work of their careers. And last but not least, 2024, my favorite song of last year has got to be Sonata Immortal Beloved by Bruce Dickinson from the Mandrake Project. Bruce Dickinson is my favorite vocalist of all time, and the Mandrake Project was my favorite record of 2024, so as it works out, of course, something from this record would be my favorite from 2024, in terms of the best songs from last year. And so, Sonata Immortal Beloved is just a perfect album closer for Bruce's first solo record in nearly 20 years. It has this deep, intense, emotional vibe to it, which makes sense. Bruce definitely does have a flair for the dramatic, but, it's almost to the point of self-indulgence, but in a good way. And, you can tell a lot of thought went into this entire album, and that's one thing I love about it. And this is just a real roller coaster of a song to close out this record here. So, from 2020, rounding it out here, we started in 1980, now we end in 2024. Let's go with Sonata Immortal Beloved by Bruce Dickinson. So there you have it, 44 years of metal, my favorite song from each year. I'd say you can see my picks right over here, but I'm not going to write all 44 of them. But anyway, 44 years, this was not an easy list to make, right, having to choose from each year. And I'm sure that there are definitely some snubs that I don't realize now that I'll realize in hindsight, but just some of my personal favorites. I don't think there are any wrong answers here, so I just wanted to share with you guys some of my favorites from each year in metal history. And so if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below, turn on the bell for notifications so you don't miss a new upload, and be sure to let me know down in the comment section below what are some of your favorite metal songs from some of your favorite years in metal. I mean, you don't have to do all 44 years, obviously, but if you just want to share some of your favorite years in metal history and your favorite song from that year, I'd love to hear it. So please let me know all that good stuff down in the comment section below. I want to hear from you. And until next time, it's the CD Guy, Johnny Z, signing off. Take care, everybody.